Good evening and welcome to the Glazov Gang. I'm not Jamie Glazov. I'm Josh Brewster, filling in once again for Mr. Jamie Glazov. And the Glazov Gang is brought to you by the David Horowitz Freedom Center. And of course, you're watching it here at frontpagemag.com. Tonight, we have a special new guest tonight I'm going to get to in a minute. In the meanwhile, let me introduce my esteemed panelists, a couple of guys who you'll remember from previous shows. Mr. Dwight Schultz, Murdoch from the A-Team. Dwight Schultz fansite.nl. Over here, we have Mr. Eric Allen Bell, who's going to fill us in on the Murfreesboro Mosque in Tennessee and all kinds of other good stuff. And he is from globalinfidel.tv. This man is very seriously on the case. And our new guest tonight, who I'm very honored to announce, is here, Susan Olson from latalkradio.com. Susan, how you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Two Chicks Talking Politics. That's the new show.
That's it.
Well, welcome to the show. I'm really glad you're here. Let's fill me in a little bit about what you're doing now, Susan, with Two Chicks Talking Politics and stuff like that.
Well, Two Chicks is fairly light. The premise of the show is to try desperately to get people to talk to each other more and to realize, people aren't that different. And there's a lot more in common. Most people disagree about things because they don't really know the language that the other person is saying. And they get put off by the way the other person says things. And really, when it comes down to it, we don't have that much in the way of differences. So I try to take a topic and make it easy enough that I can understand it. And, we go from there and try to bridge some gaps.
Well, I'm really glad you're here tonight, and one of the key reasons here, Susan, is that you just touched on something that I started this topic last week, and I want to continue it this week, and that is, you hear a lot about radical Islam on this show, okay? And I, again, will announce the disclaimer that I have absolutely no issue with any Muslims who live here in this country peacefully, with Jewish and Christian neighbors. Obviously, we're talking about a very, very small percentage of Islamists, radical Islamists, and this is a very serious problem. And one thing, Susan, is that I perceive that concern for radical Islam is becoming the domain of conservatives. And I don't like that. I think that even liberal folks have to be concerned about, Islamists' record with regard to gays, women, treatment of Jews, treatment of Christians, and this all runs counter to our American ideals. And that's not a conservative or a liberal thing. So this can't just be the domain of conservatives.
No, and I really resent it because it is. I did take the time. I have been studying Islam for a couple of years now. And when I speak the truth about it, I'm immediately accused of being a right-wing Christian. We don't talk a whole lot about radical Islam, or as I prefer, political Islam, on Two Chicks. Not just because it's a little bit dangerous, but also because there is such a tainted view of it. And, if anything, this should be a liberal concern.
Sure.
Because if you care about the rights of women and the rights of gay people and human rights at all, then these things should concern you.
Absolutely. And, it just fascinates me that it really is just becoming the domain of the right. And the problem here, Susan, is that you have this new term, Islamophobia. Okay, and to me, it's really an Orwellian term. It's just something that's thrown up by people who don't want to investigate the evidence that you're putting out there. And what's bothering me most about the Islamophobia charge is that it's thrown up when people do accurate reporting on what the Muslim Brotherhood, for example, says and what they do. If you just report what they say they're going to do and what they've done, you're an Islamophobe. And this makes no sense, and it's very dangerous. And also, Susan, I'll touch on this. This is how you silence moderate Muslims.
Well, that's...
if you're going to charge Islamophobia when we talk about this, you're silencing peaceful, moderate Muslims who otherwise would speak out against it.
Yeah, well, I think that peaceful, moderate Muslims have difficulty in speaking out in the first place because they're not supposed to. That's against the religion. You're not supposed to criticize or question the religion at all. And sometimes I wonder, maybe they're just hoping that we'll do it. for them, and a whole lot of us are really failing them in that respect. And the term Islamophobia was created by the Muslim Brotherhood, and he who controls the dialogue controls the argument. And there's a whole lot of silencing going on, and this term, I think they put it in the Kool-Aid. Everybody seems to know what it means and to use it widely.
Well, Susan, let's turn to another guy here who has a long history in the entertainment industry, an actor like yourself, Susan. Dwight, you know what I'm talking about here. I mean, we've got to make this okay. And one thing I want to address to you before we move on is I want to see more comedy shows about this topic. I want to see more artwork about this topic.
No, you're not going to see that.
I want to see other
but
things
you're not
than
gonna see that.
speeches and columns. I want to see
Wait,
pop
comedy
culture
shows about
this topic.
Muslims?
Yeah, I want to see all kinds of artwork about this topic and what it means.
But you're not going to see it.
Not just speeches.
I disagree with something that you said
Go
at
ahead.
the top of this.
Please do.
See, I agree with Andrew McCarthy, who tried The Blind Sheikh, right? I believe his book is a primer on what the problem that we have. And the problem that we have is that Islam is a political ideology. Just like communism is a political ideology, and when they said, we will bury you, that was the communist ideology. The Muslims say the same thing. They believe that their religion is the religion, and that everything else is, you're infidels, you're an apostate. You are to be conquered. Because that's the history of Islam. And so, it isn't a small minority. It is the political ideology of Islam, and it is throughout the world. Now, and I'm going to prove it to you. What did Morsi, who was just elected by the Egyptian people, what was the first thing that he said he was going to do? He's going to demand the release of the blind Sheikh Abdul Rahman, who is a mass murderer. Who does that? And think for 1 second about the ideology behind that, of demanding you release a mass murderer of your people to us here in Egypt, and then he's invited to the White House.
Okay, before we move on to Eric, though, I'm going to bring something up. I'm going to bring something up here. If they release the blind Sheikh, it would be, please.
There's a rumor that they already did.
I want to say something to you, though, Dwight. We can argue about the percentages or the number of people. Look, we're in a neighborhood right now, tons of Iranians who got out of Iran. They remember the Shah. They remember how Jews and Christians were treated under the Shah. I have yet to meet a person in this area here who appreciates Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. They don't. So here's the thing, Dwight. If we're going to function, we have to identify who's peaceful versus who's an Islamist. I mean, you can't just say you're all Islamists. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you can.
Go ahead.
You can.
See,
I mean, basically,
you have to.
Yeah, you do.
You must.
Okay.
They're all Islamists.
But how do we make a distinction between people who want to live peacefully as Americans and people who really want to see a caliphate?
Anyone who will not renounce Islam is suspect, and it's their own fault that they're suspect.
Or Sharia.
There is no such thing as moderate Islam.
That's right.
It doesn't exist. If you support a bloodthirsty, child-raping, Jew-hating tyrant...
And that's just your analysis.
No, these are the facts.
That's in the
This is what Muslims are taught about Muhammad. I don't even know if Muhammad existed. This is what Muslims are taught and accept about Muhammad, the highest moral example in Islam. If they will not renounce such a vile, creepy figure, why should we say, oh, you're moderate, let's rehabilitate you?
Now,
why set the bar so low?
First of all,
why not hold them accountable as adults?
I don't agree with Bush's characterization of the religion of peace and all this. To me, it's up to Islam to prove that they're not what they present themselves as being. Well, but how are we going to function if we're not going to make a distinction
by being less tolerant?
Listen.
Go ahead.
No, let me say there is a way of doing this. Okay, you prove it. You renounce Sharia. You renounce Sharia, and you can practice your religion, but you have to renounce Sharia because it's antithetical to the Constitution of the United States.
Agreed.
You're not going to find anybody who does it. They're going to tell you they can't. Ali Muhammad, the right-hand man of Osama bin Laden, who is on tape. He infiltrated the FBI, the CIA, and the United States military. He said it. The words are there, which is, without political domination, Islam cannot survive. That is the essence.
Let's go back to Susan. Susan, your thoughts on what we're talking about here?
Well, I like to dream, and there is the Meccan Quran. If Muslims would open the gates of Ijtihad and would actually reform the religion, then maybe we could trust it. But I think exactly what he said, and certainly as waspy people sitting here, who are we to say they can't have their religion? But we can say we don't want it imposed on us.
Right.
And that means we don't want Sharia. We don't want even the tiniest bit of Sharia, and don't call us crazy, Islamophobic, xenophobe.
Absolutely.
When we get upset over hijab rules.
We need to be clear about something. We're not saying anybody can't have their religion.
Right.
Sharia is a brutal legal system.
Right.
Islam is a totalitarian political system. That's what we object to. How people worship, I have no objection to that.
Certainly, there are certain things that need to be renounced, like Sharia law, and you're exactly right on that one. Okay, folks. Good session. Woo, woo, woo. Glazov gang, I'm Josh Brewster. Don't forget, folks, The Great Betrayal, Obama's Wars, and the War in Iraq by Daniel Greenfield with an introduction by David Horowitz. And I will talk to you tomorrow. We're going to have another Rock'em Sock'em segment with our dream team, as Jamie likes to call them. I'll talk to you tomorrow.